Well, hi everybody, this is DearMamaSal, and we are live on a Friday lunchtime, which means it's time for us to talk about feelings, coping with feelings. And I continue to have feelings of brrr during the week because it's been the most incredibly cold week here in southern British Columbia. This snow that came in, we had close to a foot of it that came in, and it's the second largest snow dump. Apparently, for this part of our world. So, I mean, I know that some of you live in areas where this is quite normal, but you understand for people in southern British Columbia who freak out when it's just 2 inches. We basically have to call a snow day. You can imagine what 11, I measured 11 inches on my driveway. You can imagine what that sort of amount of snow has done to our um, populations, mental health, you name it. We've all been really incredibly impacted by it. But before we get on to the topic of change, significant change, and what creates it, I just wanted to let you know that we've got a couple of birthdays coming up. We've got Erin's on the 26th, and we've got Becca's on the 28th. I haven't had an update from Nyasha yet. So that is, yeah, I will let you know as soon as I know. It's, amazing how this snow affected me. As you I think some of you know, I ended up with having the one end of my house, the pipes froze, which wasn't a major inconvenience other than the fact I lost the use of one toilet and one uh, but vanity, but not really, because the toilet I could still use, but I just had to manually fill the tank up with water, which was fine. I can do that. I always say that the best education you can give a child is to take them camping, and not for a couple of days. Take them camping for a week or two. All right, where they learn to do without. I think it's the most important thing. Oh, sad to hear that. Sandy's saying hi, Sandy, by the way, and to Jeannie. Hi, Jeannie. It's like Sandy's saying, I'm feeling fluish today. I'm listening, but probably won't be active in the chat. Okay, honey. Well, you just let my voice lull you to sleep if you possibly can, if you're feeling fluish. Anyway, so what I found out was that uh, it's quite possible to survive without your vanity, as long as the rest of the house is working, which it does, luckily. So I wasn't without a wash. I wasn't without the dishwasher or any of the important things in my life, um, and that's really important. However, what I did find was that it required me to change my routines. And so we go back to this subject of change because I know we all keep hoping that we will change on certain areas. And what I want to do is to give you reality again in one way, but also maybe give you some visuals that will make some sense to you. And the reason that I want to talk about that is because I had a visual this week that absolutely stunned me. And when it did, I was actually surprised that the first thing I did was to do something I thought I would never do. And I'm going to talk to you about that in a second. So, the good news was, in terms of the 11 inches on my driveway, that dear Siora came to visit me yesterday just to shovel my driveway. Wasn't that kind of her? And it took her about an hour and a half to do it. And she's big and strong, so you can imagine there was no ways I was going to be able to do it. But her concern was that she needed me to be able to get out of my driveway in the case of an emergency of some sort, medically, for example. So that was so kind of her to do that. I was very, very appreciative. As far as I know, as I said, I haven't heard from Nyasha. I haven't had any other medical updates from anybody. So if anybody's got one and you happen to be in the chat or listening or doing whatever, or maybe on the replay, and you want to give an update for Sunday, please remember to drop me a note so that I can make sure everybody knows how you're doing. I'm going to start with talking about how sometimes change takes a lot longer than we think it's going to. How many of you agree with that? And I think about, it took me a lifetime just about to stop smoking, but it's been 11 years since I had my last puff. So, or 12, is it 12? Coming up 12 this time. And so, it's just like it took me that long. And I assure you, I tried everything they ever came up with to help me to quit smoking. But then what I call the perfect storm happened. Um, and I want to take you back to something I've talked about before, but I want to give you a reminder. It's called the 100th monkey effect. And basically what it was about, whether the story is true or not is not really the point. The point is get the visual. And the visual was that one monkey on an island decided he'd go down to the seashore and actually wash his sweet potato before he ate it. No problem. And then another monkey saw him doing it, thought, I wonder why he's doing that. So guess what? He took his sweet potato down and washed it in the water. And they're saying that once 100 monkeys did that, there were monkeys on other islands that started to do it as well. So they call it the 100th monkey effect. And let's think about how many of you thought there would never be anything greater than the VCR. Or I can remember far back where we didn't think there was ever going to be anything better than a Walkman. I mean, hello, you can actually listen to music without carrying a boombox on your shoulder. And how could you improve on that? How could you possibly improve on that? Do you know my watch plays music now if I wanted to? Insane. So, what you've got to think about is how quickly things are changing. And I think it was Einstein said that, your mental intelligence is judged by your ability to change. Not exactly those words. Can I find the right words? Hang on a second. Yes, Albert Einstein said, the measure of intelligence is the ability to change. All right. And so what I want you to do is to think about that visual. There's monkeys going down to the water, and how many times did they have to wash it before other monkeys wanted to do it? Oh, that's so cute. Jeannie's saying, I'm currently using your yellow bee soap. I'm loving it. Every time I look at the bees, I smile. Well, that's just to remind you it's got some beeswax in it, which is very good for you. So then, we go back to this thing about my quitting smoking. It took a year. I mean, a lifetime of years for me to actually get to the point where I wanted to quit badly enough that I did. So we know that two things come into play. One is that you really, really, really want to change. And the other one is that you really, really, really have to change. Or do you? Jody, I keep thinking about you and the number of changes you had to make before you could have that surgery. And yet you didn't have to have the surgery. It was, it was going to help you medically, but you didn't have to. I mean, you could have said no to it. You could have said no to all the weight that you had to lose to do that before you even had the surgery, which is really funny because basically what it's teaching you is you could have lost, a lot of weight if you had had that sort of discipline before. But we don't have enough reason for some reason beforehand, and yet, suddenly one day you do. And that is something that I want you to really think about whatever it is that you're trying to change, and you've been trying to change it for years. Thanks for the update, Jody. Jody's saying that she's having some internet problems, so she may disappear and not be here to assist us. So, Jeannie, a heads up to you as well. Be careful what you hit. So what actually amazed me is how many things had to fall into place for me to change. And what I saw is I saw a quote um, about the founder of Starbucks. And did you know that he was turned down by 217 of the 242 investors he approached with the idea of Starbucks? And you're thinking, I would love to have been an original investor in Starbucks. Can you imagine how much those shares are worth today for you? But here was the thing. He got turned down. He failed to get the money, all right, most of the time. And so what I want you to understand is it is not about that you haven't managed to change it, is have you given up on trying to change it? And I'm hoping the answer to that is not yet. And if you still have that wish, I have things that have been on my to-do list for a long, long time. Some of them stopped smoking, went on it for decades. All right. And so downsizing seems to be an ongoing, lifelong challenge that I didn't know about. And I'm horrified. I still, every day I'm horrified when I take yet another group of papers and go, these papers have been in my being for over 20 years. Why am I hanging on to them? It's very, very difficult. And, I keep thinking about something that Jody and I have found out. We both have bought big freezers, big for us anyway, freezers for when the pandemic happened, and filled them, which was a risk management thing. But now we got into the habit of buying food, cooking it, and putting it in the freezer, or buying, big amounts of meat and putting it in the freezer. And the interesting thing is to change that is very, very difficult. Yeah, Jody's saying, I lost as much weight as I was going to lose on my own, right? She needed the surgical intervention. Yes, but you didn't have to do it, Jody. You know what I mean? They didn't hold a gun to your head and say, do it or else we shoot you. This is about you wanted that for your health badly enough to make the changes. Do you know what I'm trying to say here? I don't have to lower my portion size so that I don't have to take medication for diabetes. But I choose to because that's something I want to do now. And every now and then, I have double portions. Yeah. Why? I'm a human. But overall, I'm amazed how, for example, I had an udon dinner the other day, one of those little packs of udon noodles. Now, 5 years ago, I would have consumed the whole of that pack, no problem. What I was absolutely amazed about is I cook a pack of udon noodles like this now, and I add enough vegetables to it and maybe a couple of bits of chicken or something, a couple of bits of chicken. And that'll be 2 meals. That I think is, it is just amazing to me. So we either choose to change or we are forced to change, all right, because of whatever the reason. So this month, I think I alluded to it in a previous broadcast, but I watched a program on Netflix called You Are What You Eat. The Twin Experiment, I think it's called. And it's all one word. I mean, all one title, You Are What You Eat - The Twin Experiment. And what they did is they took a whole series of twins, identical twins, and they put one of the twins on a vegan diet and the other one on an omnivore diet, that they were allowed to eat meat and so forth. But before they did a whole bank of tests on them to get the sort of ground, the benchmark, if you like, of how fit were they each, what was their body fat content, what was their, they went into their mental dexterity, they went into their gut health, all sorts of things. They did a whole bank of tests on them. And then for a month, I think it was, they fed them these 2 different diets. And then at the end of it, they and they all did the same things. You know what I mean? They all did the same exercise routines. Both twins did the same sort of exercise routines. They carried on with their life normally, and all those sort of things. Because what they wanted to know was how much impact did food alone have on their bodies. And so it was mind-blowing, quite honestly, to see the changes. And I think it's a 4-part series, and by the end of it, I did something. I did something I thought I'd never do. I literally went straight to my computer and I called up my or online shopping app, and I started to order some vegan products. I've thought about it, but I've never done it before. I've always thought, who wants fake anything? But there was something about the way that they presented the information during this particular series that made me think, wow, they interviewed people making imitation cheddar cheese, for example, and you could tell how hard they worked. They realized that people will always want to eat cheese, right? We're conditioned to do it. We're conditioned to eat bacon. We're conditioned to eat, bacon and eggs. We're conditioned to all sorts of things. And so the most important thing was to make replacement food that still looked like the food that we want to eat, so that our senses were fooled, if you like. Oh, I've got an itchy nose. Were fooled into that there wasn't a change coming. And I found that really interesting. That if you want to make a significant change, you sort of need to do it in a way that it doesn't disrupt your routine too much, doesn't disrupt your norm too much. For example, I'm busy downsizing, and what I do is every time I go into my craft room, I remind myself I have a diary in there, a diary that I keep specially for what I'm doing in there, and I write down what next steps would I like to take. Not that I have to do them. What next steps would I like to take? What looks easy? And then I sort of have them, plotted out during the month, that I spend 10 minutes. It might be just cleaning up one little area, but I get it so easy that I can't say no to it. And I'll talk more about that in a second. So why did I go and get online and order vegan food, which, by the way, will arrive tomorrow? So by Sunday, I'll be able to do a taste test for you. I'd like to say that the reason that I did it was because the way they presented it. All right? They really did present it in such a way that I was disgusted about the amount of meat I ate, even though I've cut it down dramatically. And I was also disgusted with the amount of dairy that I inhale. When I thought about it, between milk and cheese and yogurt and sour cream, how much dairy do I consume? A lot. And it's my main way of getting protein. That's the lie I tell myself, like there isn't any other way. And I don't know about you. But anyway, what I found was the way they presented it was really important. Some dairy is very good for your bones. I agree with you, Jeannie, but you don't have to eat dairy for that goodness. You can get it from collagen. You can get it from other things, is the point. All right. But we're conditioned because of, all the advertising that we've been hit with and everything else. We've been conditioned that we can only get it from dairy in some ways. All right, so Sandy's saying, we went plant-based years ago before my diagnosis. We ended up bringing back some items. It was just too difficult for me to cook after diagnosis. You know something, Sandy? That's what I already realized. I don't want to give it all up at all. That's not what I want. Let me give you a visual of why, and then I'll go back. All right. Um, Imagine that this is a toilet bowl cleaner. All right. And that's normally how we buy it. Agreed? How much of this is water? Yeah, we're actually paying really good money to have water, but also how much does it cost to transport? This is heavy. Okay. Oh, there it is. Okay. So the point that I want to make is this. This weighs 2 pounds, 2.5 pounds, right? Just this, right? And yet they now make this, which is a little strip, no water, got the same ingredients as that lot. And all you do is you drop this into your toilet. You let it dissolve, which it does. It's totally biodegradable. You let it dissolve, and then you just, clean your toilet. Here's what I want you to think about. How much does it cost to transport 100 of these to the local store? Or maybe 200. I don't know how big a batch. How much does that cost? How many trucks does it take? And 100 of these, how much does it cost? It weighs 2.2 ounces. And that's for how many bits in there? 36 of them. So what I want you to do is have a look at this and don't think about our conditioning. We're conditioned to use the spray bottle, all right, or the shaker with big holes in it to make sure we use plenty. What I want you to do is to think about how many things am I using and eating because I'm conditioned to. Yeah. Sandy is saying it is a misconception, I think, that milk is the be-all for calcium. It's not true, but we're conditioned to drink it for that. All right, that's what was my thinking as well. How can I get my calcium? And you know me and my nails, it's like, how will I have big, strong nails if I don't have cheese and milk and dairy? But that's the whole point. They showed you how they made these and how they were putting the stuff in that would make sure you got not only as much protein or as much calcium, but more than. And I went, oh, that's interesting. And I think it was the segment on the people making gourmet cheeses, fake Stilton and also Gorgonzola and stuff like that. They were actually making sure that your senses were not out of shape, all right? But it was possible. And you think about it. Think about all the food that goes up, to the space station. All right. You and I both know that there's not a lot of water that goes up to the space station, right? They have to make sure it is dehydrated, and you don't have to worry too much about where the water comes from because you'll work that out. So, number one, the information that they gave was pretty good. And there's something else that struck me. Was about 10 years ago, I was pretty against marijuana, even for medical reasons, quite honestly. And then Dr. Sanjay Gupta came up with that first story about weeds, all right, and how it was helping a little girl called Charlotte with epilepsy. She was having like 300 seizures a day. And when I saw that, it changed my whole thinking. It was significant change for me. It was like, wow, if it does that much good, then why wouldn't we use it for those reasons? Why wouldn't we use it? We have the ability. and it's plant-based. And, what happened was in my mind, if it had to do with marijuana, then it had to do with psychedelics and stuff like that. So, but it isn't, right? It's about taking the good stuff and using it, not the stuff that creates the rest of it. So to me, it was like, boy, I remember I was significantly changed after seeing that first story of weed. And then each one he comes out with, I watch it because they're using now more and more research and trying it as a herbal medicine now, which it always has been in the way back past, right? Until it was what was it, criminalized in the when was it? I think 1940s or something that it was criminalized. All right. So one of the things that Sandy's saying, it was a lot of cooking. We used plant-based milk, yes, and that's what I'm one of the things that I'm going to try again. Hang on a second. Just got to get this untangled. Hold on a second, people. Hang on. There we go. So what I found was I asked myself the question, all right, what would I find most difficult to give up? Would it be meat or cheese? All right. Which would I find more difficult? Now, Sandy is saying, yeah, I agree, Sandy. Cheese was more difficult. In my imagination, it was the cheese that I'd find more difficult. And I'd already proved that to myself. I'd already proved it by myself because I've managed to cut down my meat intake by significant, I would say 50%. But I have not decreased my cheese intake. Yeah, interesting. We're not surprised by that. Jody did the research. Thanks, Jody. Oregon was the first state to decriminalize marijuana in 1973. Can you just check when it was criminalized in the US? I think it was in the 40s. Up until then, it wasn't a big deal. I can remember as a kid being given something for period pains that I think had opium in it. When I say as a kid, but as a teenager. Yeah, it wasn't. Wow, I did well there, Jody. Right, right. It was criminalized only in 1937, and then decriminalized by Oregon in 73, and then systematically other states have come. You understand the 100th monkey thing, where more and more states are now joining in. Took one person to do it, and then more and more started to do it, right? As they learned more. And so what I want you to do is whatever it is that you're trying to change, will you understand the 100th monkey idea? Will you understand that sometimes it will take lots of little steps for you to actually make a big change? Will you understand that what you're really doing is reconditioning your brain? Now, this whole thing that I was saying about Jody and I and our freezers, all right, because we're frugal people, because we are aware of the cost of things, we're used to now cooking once and putting one into the freezer bank. But what has happened that we don't have reason to do that? And we got into the habit of doing it so much that we ended up with a completely full freezer that we couldn't fit anything in. So now we are trying to change that habit. Very difficult, as Jody and I have found out. What I'm trying, by the way, I have now put in my third grocery order of the month, the third, where I didn't order any meat. Or I am just blown away that I've done this. My third order, and I didn't order any meat. So That is, there's Nyasha. Okay, Nyasha, I said that we didn't have an update, so maybe you'd be good enough to give us one if you can. And if you can't, I understand, and just let me have one when you can. So, if we know that the most difficult thing for me to give up would be cheese, does that mean I have to give it up completely? No. What if I only half gave it up? All right. Now, I'm thinking about that because some of you know I make my coffee, the foam, because I'm a latte drinker, with skim milk powder. All right. So I came all the way down to skim milk and then skim milk powder, which I then, it thrusts up beautifully. I want to tell you, it really does a good job. And then I asked myself, what if I didn't do that on every coffee? What if I only did it on, what if I changed to something else for one coffee a day? I have 2 coffees a day. Does that make sense? And so what I did, I bought this Earth's Own barista. This is the one, all right? I'm not paid to do this, people. This is just because it really is. And I tried this. And what I was stunned at is it does a really good job of making foam. Not quite as good as the skim, but good enough. And it's oat, not dairy, and it tastes great. But it's expensive, all right? And then I thought, well, is it really expensive? All right, so Nyasha, her update is that the news is not good, that the corneal transplant can only happen to one eye, the other eye is disintegrating. Okay, so is that to the bad eye or the good eye? That is, what I'm saying is both eyes have problems. So are they saying you're just going to lose the sight completely in one eye and they can do a cornea implant on the other eye before it generates too much? Or is it this eye's going to, they'll deal with later and they'll do the bad eye? Okay, so Jody's saying that she enjoys oat milk too. Now, I don't enjoy it yet, for things like my cereal. But could I drink it? I guess so, if I had to, or if I wanted to badly enough. So the next thing I asked myself is, would you be willing to use half as many eggs? And if so, where would you use them? And I was thinking, well, I'd use an egg substitute for my crepes. I make crepes a couple of times a month. Yorkshire pudding, I wouldn't mind using liquid eggs, fake eggs. But, there's no way I'm going to replace a boiled egg, is there? Do you understand? So it's like I could cut down. I probably eat a dozen eggs a month. So it's not too bad. But could I cut it down to 6 a month? Wouldn't that be interesting? Maybe I have a dozen eggs every 2 weeks. Maybe that's true. Anyway, but what if I only had a dozen eggs once a month? For example, I kept thinking about the fact for, our when I moved here, because this was a much smaller house than the one I was in, the size of my compost bin was dramatically changed. I'm going, really? That's all I have? And so was my garbage bin. But the funny thing is, and then they only collect the garbage every 2 weeks. The organics they collect every week. And I thought, the garbage only gets collected every 2 weeks? How will I ever manage that? Do you know I can put my garbage can out once a month now? That's how much I have changed. All right, so Jeannie's saying that she worked for a doctor who did work to prevent gallstones. He ate an egg every day. I try to do the same. Yes, but what is it in eggs that help prevent? That's what you got to find out, Jeannie. What was the thing in eggs that helped prevent gallstones? Good point, though. All right. So you're conditioned to have a healthy gallbladder. You need to eat eggs every day, but it's whatever it is in eggs that you need, not necessarily an egg. All right, so Sandy's saying, sadly, she can't do oat milk because of the carbs. We use an almond cashew blend, all right? It has some good calories, but not as many carbs. And that's the point, all right? The point is start testing what you can and cannot tolerate. And remember the first time they came out with an electric car and you went, yeah, right. Jetson stuff, all right? But, it's not so weird anymore, is it? All right, so that's what Nyasha's saying. I did understand that correctly. All right, that yes, she will lose the sight completely in one eye and no corneal transplant on the bad eye. And they will on the good eye. So, Nyasha, big hug, honey. That's a horrible shock. But it's better than going blind, right? And that's what I want you to remember. All right, it's a horrible shock that you will lose one eye. It was a horrible shock for me to lose one boob, but it was better than cancer. And I want you really to understand that we can't understand what that feels like because we've never had it happen. So Jodie's saying she loves cashew milk. I've never tried cashew milk, so that'll go on for next week. All right. I've only tried almond. I don't think an oat. I don't think I've tried cashew yet. And yet, I have started adding cashew nuts to my smoothies. Yep. So Jodie's saying, speaking of gallstones, there's also evidence that regularly eating nuts, such as peanuts or cashews, can help reduce your risk of developing gallstones. All right? So what I'm saying is, I totally understand why Jeannie would eat eggs every day because she had that visual, all right? But what I want to do is to go, if this is the visual of eating an egg every day, what if you could eat something else that gave you the same as you get from the egg? Would you consider it? I'm not asking you to change. What I'm asking is, would you consider it? And that is really the next thing I asked myself. What if I took baby steps? What if I took a year to find out if I could find something that I liked as a replacement cheese for half of the cheese? Now, which half of the cheese? And I'm thinking about, for the cheese that I put on top of my macaroni when I make it, or in my macaroni when I make it, if it tastes the same, if it looks the same, why wouldn't I? And then I was thinking, the cheese I put on top of vegetables, because I do. What about the cheese I have in my daily pita? That alone, I have a slice of cheese in my daily pita. That would be 365 slices of cheese that I drop out of my diet. But still get the same benefits, because that's what they're making sure they do, is they put the same benefit into the fake cheese. All right. So I thought, would I be willing to try it? Ah, that's so cute. Nasha's saying, the destruction has gone deep all the way into the lens. So sad, right? She said, thanks, Mama Sal. You've pushed me in ways I wouldn't do myself. This is very different. Sorry, it's a very different way of talking to myself. Yes, very important. When I had to make the decision whether to lose a boob or not, I went, it's purely my ego. um, you know, and actually it turned out to be more than my ego. It's very strange to only have one boob. The way you dress is more different. Why? One boob sags more than the fake one. Can you see that? This is the pretty perky one. That's a fake one. But this is my real one. So all the time I'm trying to. um. That's so cute. It's Nasha saying, "What would Mama Sal do?" And that's what she says to herself, and that's what's getting her through the journey. Yeah, you bet. And I ask, what would Jody do, or what would Erin do? All right, and that's really, really important. Jody's saying that she followed a vegetarian diet for a few years, and I used it to make a dish called macaroni. Oh, macaroni and cheese. It was delicious. Lionel even enjoyed it. Yes. So what I'm looking at is, I'm surprised how many times I add no, almond flour into things now instead of real flour, or as well as real flour. When I'm making my batter for crepes, I now use 50% self-raised, what do you call, regular flour, and then add, you know, the same in almond flour. It's amazing, and I love the taste of them, quite honestly. So what if I took baby steps? How many of you think that I would be interested in my experiment? How many of you would like to see me try fake cheese? And you do realize that the more we use these things, the cheaper they will become. So here's what absolutely stunned me. And it stunned me in a way that blew my mind. And I encourage you to try it. I went to my shopping app and I thought, I wonder what they have in vegan foods. Because, you see it occasionally, right? You know about the soy milk, and you know about the oat milk and the almond milk. Got those. I've seen them all the time. But what else do they have? I was blown away. Did you know that they make vegan sour cream, vegan ice cream? Ice cream. I went, I'd try that. Did you know that Magnum, that wonderful ice cream bar with the chocolate and nuts on it? That one? Did you know they make a vegan version? I bought it. I bought it. Got to try that. Now, is it exorbitantly expensive? You bet. But my challenge is to try these things. All right. I might not have the budget to continue them all the time, but I think I'm going to find one or two that I can afford to change. So you're adding more protein from plant-based things. Interesting. Cashews make a very tasty cheese sauce. Is that right? Just on their own or added to? I understand that cashews are the base of a lot of these fake cheeses. And so, to me, it's like, that's interesting. And that's why I'm saying, to watch them make it, just really, that was the visual. How many of you could feel the visual of this? You could feel it in your soul. All right? That this obviously is much heavier, costs much more to transport, and therefore is polluting the air a lot more than this. How many of you can feel that in your gut? This has got to be cheaper to transport than this. Therefore, this makes more sense. And if enough of us can start practicing now. You do realize that when we might save the planet, not everybody in the world's going to do it. We know that, all right? And it doesn't mean you have to change completely. But what if you started now? Because unless we change to plant-based foods, we're not going to be able to feed the planet. Now, it's not about our lifetime. But, I'm pretty certain that any moment now, if they're not doing it already, that a lot of the school meals will become plant-based. Why? They need to teach the next generation that there's some really tasty food out there that doesn't have meat in it. I was interested in they make a fake ground beef. I'm prepared to try that. So to me, it's about, and if I am prepared to try it, I had to wonder, are any of you prepared to try it? All right. My big question, and it had to do with the comment that Jeannie made about an egg a day. I also am conditioned to calcium and protein coming from dairy and meat. Totally conditioned to that. So the only way, what I think was so impressive with this documentary that I saw was when they showed you what actually was happening in our bodies and what happened to the group that carried on eating meat versus the ones that didn't. And I went, even if I could halve the amount of meat and cheese, all right? If I could halve it, I'd be healthier. So to me, it's about baby steps. It's like my goal is to find one fake cheese, just one fake cheese that I could use in my um, daily pita. And then I will find one fake cheese that I can replace my smoked cheese with. Because I also like to buy those little baby bells for a quick snack. Right? And so this is about, and I don't have to become vegan. This is about, can I change from the diet that I'm presently eating? Can I change into a more healthy diet without losing any of the calories and everything else? So, Jody, one of the reasons I asked you earlier in the week about the protein was because I remember you talking about one of the things they recommended you have was bone broth for protein. And I realize now that that wasn't just a liquid. You can get bone broth as a powder that you can add into things. For example, I could add bone broth into my bread, or I could add, just the particles of it. Um, and I thought, that there are all sorts of little ways. What if I made bread with instead of putting skimmed milk powder in my bread, which I do, what if I put soy milk in it? Now, I've also been slightly conditioned that soy isn't good for you. Does anybody else have that knowledge? Does anybody know whether that's just the marketing people getting upset with soy, or, you remember we were told butter was terrible for us until it wasn't, and now margarine is bad for us. It's just like, and now we're back to plant-based again. So guess what? Maybe margarine isn't so bad for us. It's amazing how these things change. But what I wondered is how many of you have considered but haven't tried it yet. And so if so, here's my question. Number one, do you want me to show you as I try these things? And number two, can you think about what you'd be prepared to try? Now, Jody said, There've been things that bone broth wise, for example, she still enjoys it. All right. She needed to add it to her diet before. Jody, how many grams of protein is it that you have to put into your body? Jody has a lot of experience in this protein thing. Okay, so Jody's saying, my doctor wants me to have soy only occasionally due to the elevated risk of cancer in her situation. Yeah, I had a feeling I'd heard that soy can be, so again, everything in moderation. If you're going to drink soy milk, maybe, try an almond base or something else, right? 60 grams of protein a day. One of the things they found out in that experiment that I was watching was it was very difficult for some of the twins to eat enough. Not just protein, just to eat enough. They were so conditioned not to eat very much. The portion control and all that sort of stuff, that intermittent fasting or whatever they got into, that they were having to eat more than they thought was right and more often. And that's what they needed to change their thinking on. If you're eating the right foods, then you can eat way more. All right. And so, again, I would ask you, are you getting your fruit and vegetables every day? And if not, why not? I find that I have at least one fruit smoothie a day to make sure I get at least two other fruits into my body every day. I also, vegetable-wise, I make sure I have at least 1 cup of mixed vegetables every day and a salad. All right? So that's it. Now, Jody, about this not filling up the freezer thing, my big challenge at the moment is to buy vegetables that don't go off quickly. Why? Because then what happens is I want to cook them up and put them in the freezer. So without a doubt, the trick is to buy vegetables that will last. No more vegetables. In other words, I used to buy 3 of these a week. And if I had leftovers, I would just put them in the freezer. No. I are now only allowed 1 a week. I change the color every week. And what I realize is even 1 a week, I don't necessarily eat it all up. That surprised me. Okay. I found that buying 1 cabbage a month for me is a good idea. Now, what happens is the outside of leaf, right, this one, starts to dry out. This one is paper thin now. Right? You can probably hear it. Can you hear it? But it's keeping the next layer fresh. And so I can now buy 1 cabbage and it doesn't go in my, oh, that's the other thing. I'm trying not to keep things in my fridge the way I used to. Hiding. I keep it out so I can see it. So this cabbage will last me a month. It's already lasted me a couple of weeks, and look how much I've still got left. Right? I have found that romaine lettuce like this and wrapped, just after I use it, I wrap it in a dry piece of paper towel, which I recycle. I rinse out and dry it and then use it again. All right. This, I will be able to use 1 bag of romaine lettuce a month. It keeps it fresh for a month. It's hard to believe. So some days I will have a coleslaw and some days I will have a romaine lettuce salad. Make sense? So that's what I'm doing, is I'm doing these baby steps to try and change, not these huge ones. So, have any of you tried any of the fake meats? I don't mean tofu. Mind you, some of you probably have had tofu. I'm a little bit conditioned against it, so I'm probably going to need to try it again. But have any of you tried any of the fake meats? The fake chicken or the fake beef? Have any of you had a fake beef burger? I'm pretty sure that making a fake ground beef shepherd's pie or cottage pie um, probably wouldn't taste that much different. That's my thinking. So I think of all the fake meats, I'd probably try that one first. Or, fake meat in a marinara sauce, over spaghetti. Spaghetti bolognese probably wouldn't taste. Meatballs probably wouldn't be a big stretch. Hmm. So I guess I found out what's the first fake meat I'm going to buy. But only after I finished the real meat in my freezer. So Jody, the next thing I know, you've had an Impossible Burger? Have you had an Impossible Burger? Oh, I want to know. Tell me more. Isn't it amazing though how scared we are? Or maybe it's just me. Okay, Jeannie's saying that she tried cauliflower rice and she didn't like it. Yeah, that's okay. It's, the thing is to find things that we do like. Okay, so here we go. Jody's saying, and Lionel too, apparently, that she loves the Impossible Burger. Lionel does too. They taste identical to real beef. So, does it make sense? If you're going to buy ground beef, maybe buy an Impossible Burger and either, just sprinkle it on top of your spaghetti or put it in a spaghetti sauce. That's quite a good way to buy it, actually. I'm inclined to use my beef patties as portion control. Does that make sense? Because a beef patty is in itself portion control. So I like to buy ground beef that way sometimes, just so that I know that's a portion. So Jody's telling Jeannie that she found that seasoning the cauliflower rice made all the difference. I didn't care for it plain. So what did you season it with, Jody? Nutmeg is my guess. Yes, and the thing is not to expect it to taste exactly the same as rice because it doesn't. I understand, that making a cauliflower base instead of pizza crust is a good one as well, right? So, but I agree with you. And that's the thing that they were saying, Jody, in this documentary. The cheese lady was fascinating to me. She said, unless it looks like cheese, people aren't going to eat it. Unless it tastes like cheese, they're not going to eat it. All right. So therefore, number one is to get all the health benefits and then more into the cheese. And then does it taste like cheese? Because if it doesn't, it's not going to sell. Does it act like cheese? Can you put it under the grill? All right. And so I want to tell you that segment made a meaningful difference in my life. That of the four, the whole thing was fascinating, but that segment with the cheese lady in that unbelievable, um, almost scientific lab. That's what it looked like. Now, how many of you are going? If it's fake, then it's not good for you. How many of you, if it's, I'm thinking about that. For example, you know, fake sugar is not good for you. And yet, I want to tell you, I have been using um, huh, I've been using fake sugar for 2 or 3 years now. Yeah, Sandy, cheese has a mouth feel to it, all right? It makes it hard to quit. Yes, and also I would say that that's why I'm saying I don't necessarily want to quit it completely. I want to find out, can I swap out a couple? Jodie's also saying that she added curried vegetables to cauliflower rice. All right, so it's about what do you need to do to it to make it possible to eat, all right, and be tasty. And once you've found that out, then you'll eat it more often. Very good. So I'm going to do some experiments and I will share my journey with you in case any of you are interested. But am I planning to become vegan? No, that's not what I'm planning to do. What I'm planning, I don't think I will ever want to not have, go to dinner with um, Dougie and have my surf and turf, or turf and surf, whichever way around it is that I meant to say it. Um, Turf and surf, I think. But, it's just like, hey, all right, so Jodie's saying that's exciting, Sal. Looking forward to the experiments. Well, part of me is and part of me isn't. But does it make sense to you? There's certain places where I think it's easy to make that change. Do you understand about the liquid egg or the non-egg in things like crepes? I think would be quite easy to do, or in batters or stuff like that. But cheese has a mouthfeel to it. That's a very good point, Sandy. So that'll be something I'll be looking for. Where is it that you can eat it and it's okay? And whereas about no, I'm pretty certain, therefore, that the midnight snack of a piece of smoked cheese probably not going to do it. But there's only one way for me to find out. I definitely have never tried cashew milk, so that'll be interesting to do. If that, and I know that is fairly decently priced as well. So, let's be honest. If I wanted to really get serious about this, I wouldn't have anything in my coffee. I just drink it black. But I like my foam. Hmm. So, are any of you with me on this? Are any of you willing to try something that you haven't tried before? Oh, okay. So Sandy's saying that the cashew doesn't firm as well as the oat. Okay. Therefore, what if you halved it? That's the way I started with the baristas. I halved it, put in half barista, half skim, and then I found, hey, I quite like just the barista on its own, the oat milk. So now, using things up from my freezers and pantries, that's my next segment. I have found in the back of this larder here, got a larder in the kitchen that is pretty darn full, as well as the one in the laundry room that's getting a little space in it. By the way, I have to tell you, people, it's hard to imagine, but I actually am beginning to see a little bit of space in my big, two dead body type freezer. I actually opened it up the other day and I went, I think I see space. Not a lot, but it's no longer that I have to reorganize things so I can shut the lid. Actually the lid shuts now. So I must be doing something right. Yes, Jodie's saying we're now having vegetarian meals every Friday throughout the year, rather than just during Lent. Yeah, I was going to talk about that and I forgot. Meatless Mondays. All right, pick a day. All right, so now here's the next thing. I have found in this cupboard at the bottom, towards the bottom, hidden, a couple of packets of rye crisp bread. And I'm going, I should throw that out. It's been there for a couple of years, obviously. So then I thought, but before I do, can I use it? And the answer was apparently yes. I can use it. I actually Googled it a bit and found out that I can use it. And they recommend using it for toppings on top of vegetables, for example, mixed with herbs and in like a stuffing. Does that make sense? Like you'd make a stuffing. So just mix it in with herbs and stuff and grind it all up and an egg or a fake egg, and turn it into stuffing to have with your chicken or with turkey. I thought that's a brilliant idea. But first, I need to use up the stuffing that was left over from Christmas time. But so I went, okay, that's another thing that can go. Getting there. I made this week, I made my own corn chips. I'm quite surprised, actually. So I just made the dough and froze it like this. All right, and every couple of days I'll take 2 of them out, thaw them, and make corn chips. And they're very tasty. Uh-oh. And you're asking, why would you, Sal? And the reason is, guess what I bought for the pandemic? A big bag of corn flour. So I'm going, I need to start eating that. I need to find something that I eat every day that has corn in it that I can now make myself to use up the corn flour. So that's it for the next year. Probably I will be eating homemade corn. Oh, Sandy's saying she's missing the cooking segment. Which one would you like me to drop? If I do because 2 a week is just about enough for me at the moment. So if I only did, if you guys want me to go back to doing the cooking segment, I gladly will. But I would need to drop another one. Dum 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 dum. Think about that. So, but it's interesting that you guys, mind you, that's not true. So if you guys do want me to go back to doing the cooking one, please let me know either on the comments below this video or, wherever, because I gladly will carry on doing it and keep doing my little cooking experiments for you. I must admit, making the dough for the corn chips was remarkably easy. And then I thought, it's way too much. I've now got to put it in the freezer. But I'm allowed to put things in this freezer, not in the big one. Because this is the one I use every day and use stuff out of, right? And then as this lowers, I bring stuff out of the big freezer and put it into this one. So that's the process that I'm using at the moment. I took out another... Yeah, thanks. Sandy's saying that's a hard choice. I would say you have to do what's best for you, and I understand it being a lot of work. Yeah, actually, it's not so much about a lot of work. It's a lot of mental preparedness as well. It's hours of, when I do the cooking segments, although I do it on the fly, I also spend quite a lot of time trying to work out what it is that I haven't done before and what I'd like to do and so forth. But I have been doing some pretty interesting experiments of late, and I kept thinking, I got a feeling that the viewers would probably like to see me do some of these things, especially now as I go into this vegan segment. So I maybe just add a bit of that into this broadcast. Under the thing of feeling adventurous. Now then, I just need to go back again about the frozen pipes. So here is what I've learned. I've learned not to panic. Just because it's frozen doesn't mean it's burst necessarily. Um, and so until it thaws, you won't know whether it's burst. That's really important to know as well. And the other thing is this, that once you've got it freed, remember to keep it running. We are so conditioned not to waste water, aren't we? And so every time I put that really small trickle of water, and by the way, I'm making it lukewarm water because to my horror, my hotline also froze. And I only found that out after the cold line cleared. And I realized, wow, look at that, the hotline. That was easier to clear though. Um, so the whole thing about once it's cleared is, what are my options? I need somebody to get under my house and insulate those pipes. And it's not a job that anybody really wants to do, is to go into the crawl space with the, you know, livestock that has been in there over the years, I guess. Um, but, it's just a case of how much will it cost me to buy somebody who's prepared to do the nasty work. All right. It's a dirty job. And so it was so funny when Ciora was here, she was horrified that my pipes had frozen again, because it was on the list of things I asked whether she could tackle. And you can imagine she probably felt terrible that, she didn't want to go under there, but now I had frozen pipes. And so she said to me, I've got to find an answer for that. And I said, don't worry, we'll ask Ciora. She has the answer to everything. But what I thought was, she just needs to find somebody who needs work, and we'll send that person underneath. And if, and I'll just pay them by the hour. There are a lot of people that will do anything that you want them to for the right price, right? So to me, it's just like, it needs to be done. I don't want to keep having this problem every year. It's very confusing. Something else I wanted to tell you. For those of you who heard that I used to suffer from really cold feet almost all year, incredibly cold feet, and then I changed to flannel sheets. And I have to tell you that we've been through this incredible cold snap, and I have not had cold feet at all. And last night I did another experiment just to see. And I literally slept under just the flannel sheet, no duvet, no comforter, none of those things, just the flannel sheet. And I was snug as a bug in a rug, except where I stuck my foot out. You know what I mean? And it was so funny because I actually at one point touched my face and I felt that it was pretty cool. And so I just pulled the flannel sheet up a bit more. And I went, wow, that's how cool it actually is. And yet I am as snug as a bug with just the flannel sheet. Huh, interesting. So there's part of me that goes, that's a good thing to give people who are cold, rather than spend a whole lot of money on stuff that doesn't work. I want to tell you, my feet have not been cold at night since I started doing that. And now the experiment is, will it be too hot for the summer? And when it is, then I can go back to regular sheets, right? Make sense? Yeah, Sandy's saying she lives in her flannel PJs. Yeah, so good thinking. And I thought I'd share that. The other thing I do now, hi there, Kimmy. The other thing I do now is every time I go to pee, while we've got this funny weather, whether it's during the night or during the day, I turn my faucet on full blast to clear any water that might be thinking of freezing. All right. So, and it's on lukewarm, and I just hit the faucet straight up so that both hot and cold are running full blast while I pee. When I finish peeing, I turn it back to a very small trickle. And what I found, it's amazing how many times you can almost hear that it was starting to freeze up a bit. So it's worth doing. And to me, it's like I keep clearing the line. But without a doubt, I am aware of how much water I need to do. So therefore, if I don't want to waste the water, then I need to insulate the pipes. No maybe about it. So maybe some pool noodles will do it, I heard. Um, I know that I could use an electrical heating tape on it, uh, but I think pool noodles will be quite good enough, actually. It's worth the experiment anyway. The other thing was I watched a neighbor try to get out of her driveway while there was a foot of snow. And, I have to tell you that I sat there shaking my head. I went, why would you even try it? Because even if you get your car down your driveway, we're in a rural area. The chances are, I have no idea, but I'm pretty sure that the roads are not too clear everywhere. And it's dangerous. Only the idiots are out. And then, you know what I mean? It's just like, no, I don't think so. But she got stuck halfway down her own driveway and then spent the next 3 hours trying to get back into her carport, which she did eventually. And I went out to try and find out if I could help her in any way. And it was funny because she got quite snippy with me. And I said, hey, I am so sorry. I was just trying to help. I've been watching you and my heart's breaking. And I wanted to know if there's anything I could do to help. And then she softened and said, I'm sorry. Thank you. And I said, no, it's okay. And I'm certain the reason she got snippy was she was a bit embarrassed about the fact her car had got stuck halfway down her driveway. I said, if you'd like some cardboard to put under your wheels for traction, I certainly have a lot of it. Mr. Bezos sends me cardboard every week, lots of it. So, it's just like even when you try to help, sometimes it's not appreciated, but that's okay. Don't change who you are to accommodate other people, right? Be who you are. So, I think you said earlier, Jeannie, that one way to get stuff out of your freezer is to take it out, cook it, and then donate it. Good idea. Now, I saw something this week that I didn't know. Queen Elizabeth II, do you know that she saved war coupons so she could make her wedding dress? Are any of you surprised at that? They were in rationing at that time, and even the queen, well, she wasn't queen yet, was she? Yeah, she was already queen when she got married. No? Yep. No, she was on honeymoon when her father died, right? Okay, so it was just before she became queen. But she literally saved up ration coupons so she could buy the material to have her wedding dress made. And I don't know why that struck me as amazing that a princess, would need to do that. That it's like, if it's good enough for the people, it's good enough for me, right? I wanted to tell you about my Big Bang theory. I was asleep the other night. No, I wasn't. I lie. I was awake the other night watching tennis from Australia. And suddenly there was this horrific bang. And it was close to my house. Now, I've learned that not all things that go bang are necessarily, your house falling apart. And I also know that when something drops in the middle of the night, it sounds a lot louder than when it drops during the day. So I went, do I want to get all dressed up and find out what that was, or am I going to leave it until the morning? And what I decided to do was to leave it until the morning. And in the morning, I went out there, and something really strange had happened. My big plastic rain barrel had frozen. It's a big rain barrel, people. It's this high, like this. It had frozen, and because it was frozen, the weight shifted in it, and then it fell over. And I'm pretty sure, haven't been to check it since, but I'm pretty sure as it thaws, I'm going to find out that it has cracked because that plastic would have been very brittle because of the temperature. But that certainly has never happened. And as I said, we heard that it was the worst snow dump that we've had, bar only one. So absolutely amazing. So I'll let you know what happens to my Big Bang Theory. I also had a feeling of the joys of retirement because I could watch tennis through the night if I wanted to. And I never stopped reminding myself that, there are a lot of downsides to being retired, but there are also a lot of upsides. And one of the main ones is you can sleep when you want to, not when society thinks you need to. So that was a good thing. I have noticed two things this week. I've noticed it more, that the days are really passing very quickly. Fridays, Jody and I both agree on this. Fridays seem to come around very quickly. It's like, okay, it's Sunday, we can relax now, boom. And next thing we know, it's Friday again. And so that is interesting to me, how quickly the days are going. And then at one stage this week, I found myself beating up that I hadn't done enough this week. Do any of you do that to yourself? And then I had to stop myself and go, Sal, your life is what happens while you're trying to get on with your plans. But here's the thing, you cannot get on with your plans if life gets in the way. And then I had to find grace and forgiveness because, when you're dealing with frozen pipes, when you're dealing with a foot of snow, when you're dealing with, all these other things that were going on, you can't get on with the plans that you had as well. All right. If something has to give, you've only got 24 hours in the day. When the pipes freeze, things have to change. You've got to do different things. All right. And so, it's like I realized this week more than ever, part of dealing with change is being flexible enough to go with the flow and to know that I'm not a lazy person. Why was I beating up on myself? I felt like I was a slug for some reason because I wasn't getting things done that I planned. And I went, no, that's not true. I work very hard at not being a slug. I work very hard at putting in at least 6,500 steps a day on average. Don't have to do it every single day, but on average, I work to get 6,500. At the moment, I think I'm in the 7,000 steps a day average this week. So definitely doing okay. I also noticed this week that I had a feeling of slight success. My willingness to try and be tidier is beginning to show evidence in places. The same as we were talking, Jody and I were talking about, the trick is not to cook too much. Because if you cook too much, you've got to put some of it in the freezer rather than waste it. So the trick is multifold, all right? When you don't buy as much, the fridge is much tidier. That's what I found this week. I got big holes in my fridge. I'm going, I've never had big holes in my fridge. My fridge is always filled to the gunnels. And it's a big double door, family size fridge, and it's full. Most of it with vegetables and fruit and things. So what I did was I've started to reduce the amount of foods that I bring into the house. Right? I started to look at, I can bring vegetables in, but unless it can sit on the counter for a while, or it's, I consider it valuable real estate now. My fridge is valuable real estate. What am I going to give room to? It needs to be stuff that's healthy for me, and it needs to be stuff that lasts. So yes, I can buy the occasional fresh raspberries, but not something. If you're going to buy raspberries, you need to freeze them, all right? Have frozen ones, and then I got to make room for frozen raspberries. So I'm really learning as well that I need to cook for one meal where possible, two if necessary. For example, when I used the udon noodles, I did not want to eat them all up. Right? That's too much for me. I only wanted half. So now what do? Instead of the other half going in the freezer, the other half goes into the fridge in one of those portion control things. And either it gets eaten in the next few days or it gets thrown out. Oh, that's so difficult. That is so difficult to do. So difficult. Do any of you relate to any of this? But what I've stopped doing is filling my fridge full of stuff just so that it can turn into a Pasteur experiment. Because number one, I don't know it's there. I found keeping things in plastic containers, half the time you don't know what's there. And so that's not a good thing. Now, unless you're actually documenting what you've put in your fridge, and using it. By the way, that really helped. The other thing is, if I don't want to have the Pasteur experiments, it means that I need to eat the food that I cook. Therefore, I need to cook half as much because obviously I'm cooking far too much. Then I realized, but if I only eat half as much, then I'm only pulling half as much out of the freezer. That was the other thing. I am amazed how little I pull out of the freezer because I'm not eating the way I used to. That's part of the problem. What I thought would last me for a month is probably lasting me for a season. And what I thought would last me for a season is now lasting me for the year. So really interesting changes are happening, I would have to say. So I hope this makes some sense to you. I don't know what it is you're trying to change. How many of you are trying to downsize? Any of you? How many of you are trying to eat differently? Because without a doubt, it's about, you probably think you can tidy up a room in a day. That would be realistic if you had a team of about 20 people with you that you could work with. But from my experience, if you are downsizing, if you are dealing with a lot of, crud, it takes a long time. And so I've given up I'm going to do the craft room in a week. No, it doesn't take a week. It'll take me all year to finish my craft room. But this week, I found, for example, that as long as you keep it on your to-do list, right, that, I said I needed to do an hour of downsizing in my craft room. That was my goal for this week, to do an hour. And, I got inspired in that hour. And I did a whole lot of things that I've been thinking about I needed to do, but it would probably take me all month. And I managed to get a lot of it done in an hour, maybe a little bit more. And I felt so accomplished. I want to tell you. And the whole thing, as I was saying, in our decluttering group, and for any of you who want to join that, what we do is we show pictures of where we've actually succeeded. And it doesn't matter if it looks like we've succeeded or not. This is about, we know we've succeeded in doing something. And that's why we take the picture. And it doesn't matter because the people there don't judge anything. They're just people you can ooh and ah with. Look what I did. So what I found really fascinating was that just 3 things that I learned watching decluttering programs is, number one, the most important thing to do is before you start decluttering, have 3 bins close to you. Doesn't matter what size, depends on what you're about to do. But for example, I'm busy working on my desk area at the moment. And so I have 3 shoeboxes. Yeah, one for stationery items, one for this, one for that, one for paper, and so forth. So the first thing you need to do is to get things into categories, right? To my absolute amazement, apparently I have over the years managed to start a collection of Scotch tape, removable Scotch tape. I must have at least 2 dozen. Obviously, I kept buying them every time there was a sale, and the reason I know that is because a lot of them are on pack of 3s. But it's just like I found them in the living room. I found them, every room I go to. I've got these things. So now what I realize is the reason I've got so many is because I didn't know I had the others. Make sense? So what does that tell me? It is time to start a stationery cupboard. And then, like the ladder, start buying from my own stationery supply because I have a lot. I really don't think that I need another 30, 40 pens because I already threw about 300 pens and pencils out earlier in the year. But guess what I'm finding? A lot of pens that I'm not going to use. And so you have to get a sense of humor and go, really? Really? Um, and I just get amused with myself going, really, where did these come from? You just threw about 300 out. Where did these come from, people? QBs I hadn't seen yet. So what I encourage you to do is to work on a very small area and to get the joy of just knowing you did something. And the fact that it may take you a lifetime to get around the whole house, that's okay. That's what I've told myself. Sal, it's okay. Just know that every week you need to do at least, 10 minutes to an hour. And I say 10 minutes to an hour because I find if I start for 10 minutes, I normally end up doing about an hour. The thing is to start. The big thing I collect other than Scotch tape is papers that I have absolutely no use for whatsoever. So they're all going into a big box now, a banker box, all those papers. Because I need to look at them one by one to make sure that it's not my birth certificate or something hidden in there that I didn't know about, and then shred them. Or not. Half of them can just go straight into the recycling. Go between layers of my compost in my compost bin. It's just like, seriously. So, change, you have to want to do it. That back room that you've been wanting to tidy up is not going to happen unless you really want to do it. I think one of the best things I did for myself was to get some help. I have Ciora that comes in to help me once a week. And why? Because I know when Ciora comes in, it's time for me to start downsizing again. And, I know she's only going to be there for maybe 1.5, 2 hours. And then once she's gone, I know I've done my downsizing for the week. Does that make sense to anybody? It's like I've got a trigger now. If Ciora's here, whether she's doing the garden or helping me downsizing, doesn't matter. What I know is it's my time. I link it to a time. I cannot tell you how important that is. All right. So, Jeannie, thank you for being here and for looking after us, as Jody as well, our admin, both of you. Thank you for caring. And for the rest of you that watch this, let me know what it is you're trying to change. Let me know if you would like support in it, because how many of you know that having somebody to talk to about it, to talk about the challenges of it, to show them pictures is a very important part of downsizing from my experience. Very important. So this is DearMamaSal saying the other reason that it's a good thing it takes a long time is because it allows you to save up. I keep looking at things and going, what would be your ideal here? And I'm going, I need little baby cubbies to put things in. Guess what? This month I will buy some. All right? Or this month I'll go to the dollar store and find something, or whatever. I don't have to do it all in a huge expense. I can just spend, I normally allow myself about $50 a month that I go, okay, fine, what's the next thing I need? And so I'm working my way around. All right. Big hugs to you all. Understand that change is something we can do if we get the right attitude, or if we're forced to. And if we really want to, we will do it. And if we really don't want to, we'll find the excuse. This is Dear Mama Sal saying thank you for being here. We'll see you on Sunday. Bye-bye for now.